welcome back. Today we're going to paint the tentacles and yeah, all the tentacle stuff that is hanging out of every part, every body cavity that there is. And I decided I'm going to try and apply a few different textures, a few different texturing techniques. Going to try to stick to a color, but add a few color variations, and yeah, in general, just I'm going to try everything to make it a bit more interesting. For example, here I'm going to try for a more stippling texture approach, and then this one here that I sculpted more like a tongue. We're going to try and play with that flat surface a bit, and maybe do some stripes or lines or whatever comes to mind here. Yeah, so that's the plan for this video. So color-wise, I always like to prepare more colors than I'm probably going to use in the end. In this case, I just prepared a lot of intense colors in the red, orange, and yeah, purple range, and I'm just going to adjust as I move along, but I want some really intense colors, maybe desaturated on some parts, maybe towards the tip of the tentacles. Yeah, we will see. So let's jump right in. And I'd like to start with pink flesh because it should give us a more neutral base, and I'm going to apply it, selectively on some areas, and then to keep the intensity, I'm not going to paint much over that. I'm just going to try and shade, and we will see how that looks. I'm probably going to adjust a bit on the fly, but yeah, we will see how it goes. My way of painting always is a bit experimental. So let's start with the pink flesh, and I'm going to apply one layer, and then I'm going to decide whether this is intense enough or not as a base color. And I try to shift my painting a bit towards having a mid-tone established. And I'm trying to keep that mid-tone alive, as I would like to call it, so that we don't have to go over it too much. Highlights over dark areas can become rather gray very quickly, so I'm trying to keep, like I said, the mid-tone as far as possible, and then just shade and apply a few highlights, like I said. You can, of course, do the pre-shading and the pre-highlighting with airbrush or rattle can to apply some brighter color. Then you don't have that spotty finish right away. But I'm going to apply a second layer anyway. Again, you can see that a lot of the finish is still spotty, so I'm going to go over it with a second layer. Okay, so you can already see it kind of falls in line with our metallic colors, so I'm trying not to introduce a whole lot of different colors anymore at this stage. Okay, and you can see that I'm already going for a bit of a pattern on the smaller tentacles. So a bit of that line work is going to be visible after we apply the darker colors. Also on this part I'm going to fade out towards the darker parts by just painting lines on. And again, keeping a bit of that black helps with pre-shading and getting certain elements darker than others. Okay, so having a base tone of the same color on all the tentacle stuff kind of helps us drawing everything together. And from this point on, I'm going to add a few variations. I'm going to start, like I said, with different patterns of highlights. I'm just going to add lighter colors on top of this, and not pure white. I think this is going to be the lightest that we're going to go. And yeah, I'm doing this, like I said, so that I do have all the intense colors on the miniature already before I move into shading. And two things: we don't want to dull down highlight colors by hitting them with a shadow color, and also I don't want to get gray results, or that grayish feel when you paint over a dark color with a highlight color. Yeah, so those are the two things that we want to avoid here. And I'm going to start with this. So this should add an extra layer of light and a bit of a color variant. Let's see, I'm also going to pull it down here a bit into those rings that I established. Okay, also some texture here. Okay, then I'm mixing in some, oh, you can't see that, sorry. So mixing in some of the Mojave white, and I'm starting by highlighting this upper edge, and then I'm dragging down the color. To get a bit of a variation, like I said, and in between I'm going to paint thinner lines, so we have a bit of a pattern going on here. Okay. Can actually go a bit lighter still. Just irregular shapes, and I'm switching between thicker lines and thinner lines. Okay, so we will keep this, and then as we shade over that, we should get an interesting result here. I'm just selectively, because we have a bit of an edge up here and a bit of an edge down here, I'm just going to hit those edges, or just the lines that move down, and go over those edges. I'm just going to touch those a bit more. So this should make for, for an interesting pattern. We can apply a bit more light here. Like I said, I wanted a few different patterns, so here I'm going to just stipple on. We can also do that here. Make these a bit more intense. Okay, then maybe just mix a bit of that whiter, that off-white into just the pink base tone, and then applying a few highlights here. Hopefully this should give us a bit more of a pink result. So I'm going to use this as a midtone, just to get a different color into our base color. And I feel like this is missing a bit of black, so let's see. We will just move over this. Okay, just taking advantage of the consistency of the scale colors, in that they are rather transparent if you just apply one layer. Yeah, just stippling on that color, trying to keep the middle tone alive, like we said, and then we can dilute it even more. and cover some areas almost completely, and then just keep this maybe as a light, and then as we move down you can also keep this area light again. Yeah, and just get a bit of variation into that tentacle. And I want those to stand out a bit, to look more sicklish. Okay, second layer for a bit more intensity again. Okay, and into this I'm going to add some black so that we have more desaturated shadows. Let's see. Okay, basically do the same and cover less space again. Okay, what we want to achieve here is get a bit of that intensity out. And also establishing some shadows. Like I said, I kind of stippled that color on. So right now we're just trying to create some light and shadows. So, you know, sort of like a tongue that has all those taste buds, I think it's buds. If you look at that and if you shine a light on it and you're close enough, then you have areas that are highlighted or that would catch some light, and then there's some that would catch shadows. Okay, focusing again on the darker areas a bit more. Maybe do some dark lighting here. Yeah, paint some rather dark shadows where we have the structure curving down. If it's too harsh, you can feather it out with a wet brush. Okay. Right, so we're building contrast again. One thing that I forgot that's probably not too bad to put in right now. I'm just trying to mix, medium shadow color. So we have that part here that's standing out more than the rest. We can also put a shadow below that. Okay, and on top of that, I think well, let's see, maybe we can apply a few more of those darker elements so that it doesn't only look like structure. Maybe we can also simulate a bit of a pattern. I think that can look interesting. You know, like a color pattern. Okay, like I said, still trying to keep this middle part untouched as far as possible while applying those random dots. Okay, and on top of this, I think I want some white, or let's see, maybe just use this off-white, white sands. Should be almost whitish. And I'll highlight this part that sticks out a bit from the tentacle, and then maybe some parts here that are still very light. Again, trying not to be too regular. Just to increase contrast, and it should make the whole thing a bit more interesting, because now we have dark parts and light parts, and on top of that a few highlights. Okay, so you can play around with that a bit. You can make, for example, you can do those patterns, those dots a bit larger, the darker colored purple dots, if you want to go for more of a pattern approach. Actually, let's do that. So always make sure that you don't paint them too regular, vary them in size and position. Otherwise it looks too, you know, too artificial. And even if you have a regular pattern, always try to, you know, add some larger variations and some smaller variations. That way the eye doesn't get bored, and it doesn't look like it has been designed on, especially on organic stuff. You want chance to be a large factor. Otherwise, like I said, it looks too designed. Okay, then put some smaller ones here. Right, and since this is a tentacle that's probably rather wet and slimy and disgusting, we can just add a reflection here. So if this was wet, then it would technically be like a non-metallic part. And yeah, it's basically a pipe, a cylinder, and you would also get a lower reflection like here. So that's what we're trying to establish. Just use some sort of lighter color, and it doesn't matter that much that we will get some gray, some graying here. This is actually going to add to the illusion that this is just light that is reflecting. Okay, and we can continue this to this area. Hold on. Okay, and we're just going to add one more pass of that light color up here so that we do get a bit of light and increased contrast again. I've decided that my highest point of reflection is here. Then it fades out a bit towards this area. And I think I'm going to intensify this part a bit because yeah, it has a bit of a twist. That tentacle has a bit of a twist inside, or in it, yeah, in itself. So I want this reflection area to be a bit larger. Okay, maybe tone this down a bit. So that it's just a hint. Okay, I think I like that. Now we can move on to the next part. I think I'll just try and see how adding a bit of turquoise does affect this part. You know, where we have a lot of stripes. Can you see that? Yeah, now you can. So in between the lighter stripes, I'm just going to add a bit of a turquoise color. Okay, so I decided to go for a bluish green turquoise. And I'm going to add some black to this again. Okay, that was too much. So that we get some, yeah, some rather dark turquoise, also almost like a greenish tint. Just a hint of color. It's maybe too dark. Okay, and I'm going to apply that color to the stripes. So there's areas that we left alone and didn't really apply too much color on. Again, we don't want this to be too regular, give it a bit of a chance-based pattern. Okay, this is going to need some fixing, so I'm just going back in with that. mix of pink flesh and off-white. Okay, then maybe shade it also a bit with that purple. Guess that can look interesting. So all the parts that face down, I'm just going to slightly touch with that purple. You can see that, but I think you can. You can always fade it out towards the top if you feel like it's too much. Okay, and again, I do recommend that you do this kind of detail work with a magnifying glass. With my camera setup, I can't really do that, but I think you catch the idea behind it. Even if it doesn't look 100%. Yeah, super smooth, like it would if I were to paint it with a magnifying glass. So yeah, don't forget to apply your light. So I'm just carefully going over that whole thing. Just again, treat it like a pipe, and we're just going to add a chain or a line of highlights by carefully dabbing on that off-white. And we're going to focus on, for example, this curve up here. So this knee, the knee of this curve is going to be our lightest area, and then as it curves down here, we kind of have the inside of a knee, a reverse knee, so to say. And we're going to highlight this, and as it dries out, it gets a bit dull again, so we're just going over that with one more layer. Again up here. And here. So yeah, we end up with a bit of a pattern. So we have some interesting tentacles, and we also don't lose sight of our light and shadow situation. Okay, let's see, we probably can play a bit with the patterns on this one. Let's see, I might be deciding for a bit of a mix of both. So I guess I'm switching out yeah, I'll try darkening the lighter stripes, at least in some parts. So I'm mixing some of that purple, or maybe, let's see, how can we switch it up? Yeah, I'll just do that. So hitting all the lighter parts. purple. But I'm keeping the highlight up here. Okay, so now diluting the color a bit, and I'm just touching those areas slightly to give a bit of a hue change. Okay, and then I'm filling the rest up with those darker patterns. Really want to cooperate. Right, so filling the in-between parts with some of those lines, and I'm trying to switch up the patterns a bit. Start with a wider area up here, and then as I move down I make the line smaller, and then do exactly the opposite on this side, for example. Just make sure that you have even coverage, because if that is spotty, if those patterns are spotty and don't cover evenly, that's going to look weird. Okay, almost done. Right, and I'm going to clean up the in-between parts too. Right now that just looks a bit messy. Right, so this time I think I'm going to add some white to have a bit of a more pink highlight color. As I highlight those parts. Just to make it stand out a bit from this part, where we also have that kind of purple. Okay, and then we also need to highlight the turquoise parts. I think I'm just going to check and see how it looks if we go directly into turquoise. That shouldn't look too bad. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Just maybe one lighter shade, well, one lighter highlight in this case. On the top. To keep in line with the light that should catch on here. Maybe we can do this also down here. It looks kind of interesting. Okay, try not to have too many. Try to, if you have a turquoise pattern, try to cover the whole area that is turquoise with your highlight, so that you don't have any lines in between your light turquoise. Okay, I'll say it again, sorry. So make sure that you don't have any of those dark turquoise lines between your light turquoise and your light pink, because that's going to look odd. Yeah, so we fix it here. Okay, one thing that I want to try, let's take some orange and just give the middle part a bit of a wash to intensify. Let's decide on which orange we're going to take. I feel like both colors are somewhat cold. I'm going to put in a shadow of a warm color, or with a warm color, just to mix that up a bit. This could be a bit too intense. We'll just try this. It's warm enough. So just slightly touching this with an orange. Did you even see that? I'm sorry. Yeah, just a thin glaze. You can see the effect here already. So the middle part stands out a bit more. So this is what I did. We can apply one more after it's dry. Yeah, so I just drag the brush over it like this. And I think we can also try that here. Just a glaze of orange. I feel like that makes the whole thing a bit more intense. And draws it together more. Yeah, so it just adds up the color variations. Okay, and to see what we can do with that orange, let's see. I'm going to paint this one here. Start painting that in orange too. But yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's too weird. Yeah, let's kind of stick to the colors we already established. Let's see, maybe go for a mixture of these two. See what result we get. Yeah, so this is a darker purple. Alright, so I did paint the tongue or the tentacle that's sticking out of his face in the base color, and if you look at the artwork that we based the sculpt on, I'm going to try and mimic this color, and there's one reason for that. I painted the non-metallic up here in a similar color, and I want this to stick out and look apart from this. So that's why we're going to try for a more red tone, also to just try another approach to tentacles, because I kind of want to show you a few approaches that you can do, a few colors, a few combinations, few patterns. So yeah, we're just going to try and make this a deep red, deep intense red. So I do have Aldebaran red here, which is, yeah, pretty intense red, almost signal red. I'm taking the same approach, starting in the darker areas or the areas that would be shaded. And I'm just dabbing on some color, trying to spare the upper areas just a tiny bit. You know, basically it's just glazing, controlled shading, and this helps to keep the intensity of the colors. Of course, you could also use the signal red, the Antares red, or Aldebaran red, sorry, as a base color, and then paint the lighter colors over. But again, like I said, it messes a bit with the intensity. And I just want to try something new now and then. Something that I haven't tried, and I guess I hope you appreciate it. That I'm not just using one technique to paint, but I'm showing you multiple ones. Yeah, so I really like how it turns out. I'm going to apply at least one more layer. Okay. So I think the color looks interesting. Now we're just going to add some black, like always. And we're going to paint our shadows, deepest shadows. Okay, so this should add some contrast to our intense colors. Bit more black, and just selectively touch areas that would be even darker and even more in the shadows. Also do some dark lighting here. Yeah, I really like those colors. I think I'm going to use them again on the base, but have to be careful not to be, not to add too much color. So maybe I'm going to try and paint this tentacle a bit more in this color to draw it all together, and maybe have, maybe also this one. We'll see. I'll finish this one up here. Just going to add some lights. Let's see. Are we going to do this? Is this going to work? Yeah, I think this is going to work. So I'm just mixing some of the Aldebaran red with pink that we mixed here. And I'm just going to apply some lights and some spots. Maybe some more pink. Just playing a bit with the volumes. Okay, so this should tie everything together a bit more. And yeah, establish some highlights, some light situation. Okay, so I didn't intensify and yeah, and just detail the tentacle up here a bit more and brought it in line with the more purple and pink tentacles down there. So I also did paint the patterns that draw everything together by just, you know, playing with that red a bit and then mixing some pink in, and then just carefully drew some lines in a way that the tissue would be torn and twisted if it were to wrap around all those tentacles. So the last thing that I'm going to paint now is the parts here that I still have to do, and I'm going to replicate this effect up here, again going for a more red approach, and then do highlights in pink and the last parts in white, just so that you can see another variation of color that you can put into tentacles. And then when we are painting the base, I'm probably going to use this approach also on the base tentacles. Again, I just wanted to show you a few different approaches to what you can do with tentacles, and like I said, this is going to be the last one. One more thing that I'm probably going to show is I decided to do a few tips in a rather dark finish, so that you can also see you don't just have to do light tentacles. Sometimes it helps to have the option of going rather dark, especially, for example, if the rest of your armor is really bright. For example, if we were going for a white or a bone-colored Death Guard army or a single miniature, then you would probably want dark tentacles, just so you keep the balance between dark and light elements. Right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to start again by applying glazes, strategically placed glazes, and I'm going to try, oops, didn't want to cover that. Yeah, so I'm going to strategically play a bit with those volumes so that we have some interesting patterns. Okay, and we have to intensify that a bit. Just adding a second pass. To have, better coverage. Also starting to define this particular volume here. And then as we come down, because I'm kind of treating this tentacle as part of this one up here. So I also want to keep those stripes, or just those features that we paint up here. Want to also sort of keep this down there. And again, I'm probably gonna have this end in a dark color, so I'm covering the whole thing right now with red, as it will end up even darker than this. Okay, then I'm going to slowly darken these parts, just covering less in this area. As we move further down, and I'm also starting to shade, well, sort of dark line these parts. Okay, so building a bit of a volume that isn't really there, but that should be interesting by just shading and putting in a round shade here. That means we also have to put an opposite highlight. Let's see. So it should be there. That's not bright enough. So here, and this is a nice way to put in structures that are not really there. Sort of like I emphasized the bulbs, or the round, the spherical elements here. All this to make the whole thing a bit more interesting. Also going to put in some highlights here already. And maybe we can emphasize this a bit more and just cover the red that we accidentally painted over that edge. Okay, and yeah, so this starts to look interesting. Maybe it's a bit too regular still. Okay, so I'm going to put in a bit of orange in between these shapes here. That was a bit too thin. Okay, so by putting some of that orange right where the really light pink and the red is meeting, I can create a bit of a gradient. I'll also do the same here. And again, it is, yeah, I did the same up here. You can still see the orange. It sets up that, yeah, that transition from red to the pink, and it creates more interest, more interesting color variations. Okay. Adding more black to the red and going for more shadows. Again, setting up the darker area. Here towards the front. And we can start adding some kind of, I don't know, body fluids between the teeth and the actual organic, well, teeth, armor, and the actual organic components of the tentacles. So here, here, yeah, so that this looks like, yeah, the armor burst open and gave way to some of the inside. Okay, one last pass with a really dark color to get the black lining done. Also some last shade. Okay. Missed an element here. I'll just cover it with some pink right now. Must have been some part of the original sculpt that I didn't quite cover. Anyway, let's just try to make that a bit interesting. And then just shade it with some red so that it fits in. Okay. So yeah, this is a bit of an intense color. Let's see. I'm going to go back in, mix a bit of a pink color. Bring back some of those parts that we covered. So here. Okay, mix in more white. Not too happy with this. Okay. Okay, so another color variation. Like I said, I wanted to put it more in line with this up here. If it is too orange, we can still just take a bit of that pure red and just cover everything slightly with a very thin glaze so that it gets more red again. But I think I like it. It just is, again, a bit of a different approach. And you can just pick which one you like and, you know, go for a more uniform finish on your death guard if you want to. Right, so just bringing out the light a bit more. And yeah, again, always leave your highlights to dry, and as it's going to be darker once it's dry because it doesn't reflect any more light again. And then decide if you're going to add another one. Okay, so I think I'm fine with this. We lost this highlight here a bit, so I'm just going to fix that quickly. Alright, and then I said I'm going to just show you quickly what I'm doing to make tentacles darker. I just usually keep on adding black So I'm going to add some black to the red in this case, and I'm just slowly glazing over. It's kind of shading just on a highlight spot, so you can see it's getting darker slowly, and the more in between steps you do, the better it's going to look in the end. Just need to let every layer in between dry. Also, it's the same as with highlights and lighter colors. Usually once a darker color is dry, it also looks less dark for some reason, especially if there's black in. So always wait for that. Now I'm mixing a bit more black. And that's probably going to be my last layer here. And yeah, you can see that now this tentacle fades into black on the end. We can also try it down here. So I'm just going to show you how I would do it with a purple color. Again, I'm just using more and more black. That's actually the exact color we mixed to shade these parts. So again, yeah, it's a bit darker on the camera. I need another light here, but you can see, yeah, now you can see that it's just purple mixed with black. And we're just going to slowly, starting at the tip, always start at the darkest area, of course. Don't want to overdo it, and I don't want to lose the effect, so I'm just going to make the very tip dark. Yeah, so drying times are a bit annoying, but what can you do? Okay, again, more and more black. And yeah, again, start at the tip. There you can apply the maximum of blackness, and then just fade it out. Towards the lighter areas. It's important not to get too yeah, don't get impatient. Just add more and more black, like I said, until you end up with a dark tip. Don't be impatient like me and scrape away some of your paint. Always check the back side. Okay, and like I said, this works pretty good for framing lighter armor, for example. Or just, my god, why am I so impatient? Yeah, just if you need some darker elements in your miniature. Doesn't want to stay dark. I was too impatient and scraped away most of the black. Okay, let's just brute force it. Now it should be covered in all black. Right. So technically, maybe you don't even want to go to pure black. It's really up to you. Just experiment with it a bit, and then decide whether you like the look or not. And if you want to go all dark and all black. Okay, I have a feeling it's not going to get any better. But yeah, I'm happy with the result. Just some more purple here. Oops. All right. Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to finish all the other tentacles off cam, and then we're going to move into doing details like the horns, I mean the teeth and the horn. Also some teeth up here, and the eyes, and yeah, again, like I said, the next two videos, or well, the next video is going to cover the non-metallic sword and the casing. And then there's going to be one more about the details. And that's going to be it for this guy. Oh no, I forgot. I said I'm going to do the freehand here. But that's going to be the last video then. So yeah, thanks again for your support. And yeah, see you next video.